All right. We're going to jump into Predator Cold War. Now, this is by Mark Vierden, pencils by Ron Randall, ink by Steve Mitchell, colorists Chris Chandler and Rachel Menashe. So, Cold War is a direct sequel to Concrete Jungle, taking place a year later in 1990. Detective Rash is now Sheriff Rash in Oregon. He's moved to a small town in Oregon. Schaefer, on the other hand, is back on narcotics, and he gets intercepted by Phillips people while doing a narcotics bust. And he is forced to join the Americans because there are Yautja in the Soviet Union. Yes, this is a Cold War story like we thought, and it's the Americans against the Russians in 1990. Now, we gotta talk about the big issue with this story, and that is that the Soviet Union was collapsing as this was coming out. So this is just the most impractical story because there's all these tensions between the Soviets and the Americans. We're gonna have World War III because there's Americans in Siberia. Schaefer, we find out, is from Russia, or at least one of the Soviet satellite nations. He and Dutch are immigrants from there. There's also this Soviet commander or captain. She's pretty cool. She's basically Schaefer's equal, but for the Soviets. So we get a little like spy who love me sort of thing. Only there's no real romance whatsoever. She's just her commanding officers all hate her because she's a woman. It's just bizarre. It's really weird. The Yautja, we don't know why the Yautja are there until pretty much the very end. But it's a weird one. Um, what did I think of it? It's fun. It's neat to see Yautja in cold temperatures because you typically see them with in heat and conflict, right? Not in the cold. In fact, one of my complaints is they don't do what they did with the first Alien versus Predator movie, which they had more lace up armor they put on because it's quote unquote colder. So they're gonna wear more laced up. They have the laced up armor, so they're wearing more of it in that. They didn't do that in this. Although I will say, positive wise, Mark Vierden watched Predator 2 because all of those devices that the Yautja are using in that, these Yautja are using. So we got the combi stick, we got the net, we have like a weird bear trap thing, but for a whole human's body. That's a whack thing. I like that. The deaths of this are pretty flippin' gruesome. I like that the Russians don't trust the Americans. The Americans don't trust each other. But the Russians also don't trust their woman commander. They're insubordinate with her. No one likes anyone in this, and it's real enjoyable. Also, Phillips, he's running around doing some weird kung fu moves on people. He's like an old man. And he's fighting people, young Russians, hand to hand, and winning. It's fun. Rash ends up getting involved about halfway through. You're wondering when he's going to show up, and he does. And he does the most rash things possible. No pun, maybe pun intended there. Because he does some whack things, and that's how he gets involved in the plot. And I'm all for it. It was very fun. But, this book does have some issues. Like I said, it's a Cold War story, and I think by the time this was done, the Soviet Union had fallen. So there's, no point. And then on top of that, there's like very dated references. So the Americans get captured by the Russians at one point, and the Americans are like trying to, they're saying a bunch of nonsense like just to confuse the Russians. They're like, "What's the capital of Sacramento?" Saying like weird things like that, and then they say, "Who killed Laura Palmer?" So we're getting like a weird Twin Peaks reference, which just, I bet you like half the people that have read this book did not understand where that came from at all. I mean, I giggled a little bit, but it was just like, why is this here? But anyway, I liked Cold War. I it's very rushed at the end, like how Concrete Jungle was. I guess that's just a staple of Mark Virden's writing. Whatever. It's better than Earth War, Aliens Earth War, I'll tell you that. But that doesn't take much. My brain wasn't insulted. But anyway, what would I rank this? Probably a good 4.2 out of 5. It's worth your time. It's pretty fun. Very enjoyable. And I got two versions of it right here. We got the Marvel Original Years Omnibus Volume 1 that's collected in. We also have the 30th Anniversary Predator, the original comic series, Concrete Jungle and Other Stories. It's the second story in this, which this is just a collection of the Schaefer trilogy. We got matte paper versus glossy paper. It reads more like a graphic novel. This reads more like single issues. So pick your poison, I guess. They're not poison. They're both wonderful and enjoyable to read. I think Cold War does a better job than Concrete Jungle did. Another fun thing before I end this, this comic, Cold War, references big game, which is pretty fun. Because we were getting a lot of Predator comics at this time. It's nice to see that we have a little continuity going on. I like that sort of thing. That's my jam right there. So it's just nice to see that. Anyway, have a good one.